You read the title, so you know what it is. Let's get into it. Alright, so we're here at the shop today. I'm with Walker and his blown up LS1. Y'all haven't seen it on my channel, obviously, but on Walker Hall's channel, we have taken this motor apart a few different times. So today, whenever Corey gets here, Mr. Crow Media, whenever he gets here with the pistons, we're going to be putting pistons, new bearings, new piston rings, and stuff like that. Put this thing back together. So whenever he gets here, we'll get into it.
Precious, since like people with JJ said something about.
All right, guys, so Corey decided to show up with some pistons. So Walker's going through and checking the wrist pins. He had new piston tops put on, and a couple of the wrist pins are a little tight. So we're gonna go through and try to loosen those up before we go assembling everything and then end up having more issues down the road. I don't think it's gonna be anything major, but hopefully we can just do an oil soak or something without having to take these things back apart. So there it is. All right, so we got all the pistons here. We're going to start putting some rings in, and once we get all the rings in, then we'll start putting the pistons into the cylinder bores. And then once they're in the bores, we will do the bearings and clearance check those before we actually do our final tight down. So hopefully to get all these pistons in today, and then I can finish up the head work and get this thing all together. So. Is it crazy, Corey?
Yeah, I'll share it after the video.
All right, so Corey said it's crazy, whatever that is. But anyway, so got my first piston done. Top, middle, and then bottom, all oil rings. So let's get all these together. It's pretty easy, pretty straightforward once I figured out which direction these things go. But yeah, so back to the time lapse. All right, we got the Walker over there, Mr. Walker Halls, throwing that last set of rings on that last piston. So here in a minute, we will start putting pistons into the cylinder bores here. Yeah, got Crow Media hanging out.
As usual.
Per usual, just over there chilling. So, yeah. All right, so now we got all that set up. I am going to be taking the bearings out of each one of these. So we got new bearings, and then I'll put all the new bearings in the caps and on the rods before I put the piston assembly in the engine. And then once they're in the engine, I will plastic gauge everything just to make sure our clearances are good before we do our final tight down, torque down. So if we have to adjust any of the bearings or anything like that, we'll do that before the heads get put on. So. right, so we are to install on the first piston. All the bearings are in. So once we get this installed, we'll plastic gauge the bearing to check our clearance, and probably do that one at a time so we're not rotating the engine with plastic dip or a tight bearing or anything. So back to the time lapse. All right, so we got the first two pistons in and plastic gauged. Everything's within spec, so from here we're going to clean off this plastic gauge, put some assembly lube on these bearings, and finish getting this thing together. I already know y'all have time lapses, so back to the time lapse. All right, guys, that's it for putting these pistons in this LS1 for Mr. Walker Hall's WS6. So probably in the next video that I show you about this motor will be the heads, where I'm porting the heads and doing all that for him, and then we'll be putting the heads on this short block assembly and going from there. So until next time.